Hey guys, so before I get into this video, I do want to say that Healing the Blocks to Love is now available. 2.5 hours where I take you on a healing journey to healing the blocks to love. That is to allow more, basically, relationships, higher relationships, more passionate relationships, sex, sexuality, and what else? Dating, and just basically overall confidence, dealing with things like lovableness, things like that. This video, I wanted to talk about some of my own personal breakthroughs that I've had a lot recently with my own healing journey, especially with the feelings of weight loss, the fact that I felt like I couldn't lose weight, that I was trying very hard to solve the problem through healing, as well as just a lot of interesting little things that I've basically learned along the way when it comes to the perspective of healing and how that basically affects our lives. It's one of my favorite topics. It's in case you didn't fucking know by now. Without further ado, let's get into it. So, if you don't know this, by now for a very long time, I've essentially been trying to solve a lot of life problems through the avenue of emotional healing. The idea that a lot of our problems are basically a creation of unresolved emotion. I'm not the first person to talk about this, and I probably won't be the last. So, I have been going on this journey when it came to weight loss that basically, having resolved basically deep depression within myself, a lot of anxiety issues, things like that, I've often always had a little bit of weight, extra weight around my stomach that I felt like I should, keyword should here, be able to solve. Now, through my whole life, I've basically struggled with this. I've done a lot of diets. I have tried to get rid of it to varying degrees of success. And basically, to varying degrees of lack of success, I would eventually gain the weight back. Now, I had been consistently, ultimately surrendering to the feelings, my blockages around weight loss for the last almost 8-9 months, almost like solidly. I had a little bit maybe last year. This year was a full frontal assault on my belief systems and my emotional state when it came to my issues with weight. Now, the interesting thing over this year, very naturally, very organically, my eating vibration basically increased. The level of quality of food that I was eating was slowly increasing. And I was no, as my partner would say, my girlfriend would say, I was no longer punishing myself with food. Now, interestingly, the process never fully made sense to me. I know the process is the same. We always talk about surrender on this channel, right? The idea is that the best way to heal is to feel, and that ultimately we're talking about surrender. So we're talking about emotional surrender. That is, the emotions that are blocking us are the very things we need to surrender to. So, for example, with the weight loss thing, I would be surrendering to the feeling that I felt like I can't lose weight. When it comes to anxiety, solving anxiety is often surrendering to that anxiety. And not only the feeling itself, but the feelings of the things that we have around it. So, for example, with anxiety, you might feel like you shouldn't have anxiety. You might feel like you want to do something. Often the feeling, that the desire itself can be a very thing that holds us emotionally in place. So with weight loss, over the last 8 months, I swear to God, 8-9 months, consistently, to the detriment of a lot of other things I've been trying to solve, specifically this feeling of I can't lose weight. And it felt almost detrimental. It felt like I was almost hurting myself. Although it felt good, it still felt quite painful. Like something wasn't quite right. And then over the last couple of days, I've had the most amazing, wholesome, heart-wrenching, beautiful breakthroughs in that area. And I'll share it with you now. The first breakthrough I had was that I felt like it should be, I felt like it should be quicker. And if you know the way emotions work, that often we will choke the speed in which something that can come to us by the very belief that it should be quicker. That means that, for example, and even if it's just from a rushing perspective, like we're like, this should be quicker, so what do? We rush it. And when we rush it, we skip the steps. Ultimately, life forces us to go back to where we were missing. It's like, for example, even in my own development, like Mr. Sharam Namdarian, I was exclusively the dating coach, all of this stuff. Through my own dealing with my own anxiety, I thought it should be quicker, so I'd rush to the process of me dealing with my anxiety, ultimately leaving unresolved processes, me overcompensating, which, by the way, healing the blocks of love, we talk a lot about overcompensation as a response to having an emotional block. Linky in the description. Mwah, mwah. But do check it out, by the way. Like, it's really good. But anyway, so there was that. The belief that it should be quicker. The other thing, and this was where the whole fucking stack of emotional blockages just collapsed for me. And the belief that it should just be one thing. Now, I spent my life dedicated to one thing, basically. And to me, this is the healing thing. It's the idea of surrender as a process of healing. And that's great. That's one thing. But the fact that I should heal only one thing and get the results that I wanted was itself a huge fallacy. Was a foundation. So I was like, basically I'm like the guy who's like, I want to find the button and I want to press the button 1,000,000 times. Now for me, the button is healing, but I was specifically looking for what should I heal in order to get this result. Once I healed that my perspective, I was basically trying to pigeonhole all the responses that I had into this one vibration, into this one feeling. Well, let's introduce a concept today. It's called the Stepladder of Emotions. Now, this is what I often refer to as the Stepladder of Emotions. The Stepladder of Emotion was a concept that before I had developed the ideas of emotional healing, when I was working with people in relationships, it was basically a ladder. Like we have a ladder, similar to a pipe. I've often used the pipe. If you know what the pipe is, great. If you don't know what the pipe is, you can learn more about it in Healing the Blocks of Love. But imagine you've got a ladder, right? Here's a ladder. At the top of the ladder is where you want to go. The bottom of the ladder is dark emotions. What people do is they want to climb that ladder, hypothetically. You know, because say, for example, it was originally with relationships. It's like the ideal relationship at the top of that ladder. Now, what happens is there's a whole bunch of rungs. The rungs are like things like I have to meet someone, or do they like me? Things like that. And when we have a broken rung, so an unresolved emotion, like I get angry, so we have a broken response to anger, or an unhealed element to anger, we basically fall off the ladder and have to climb up all the way again. And it works if you have all the rungs in place, but it doesn't work if you don't. So it might not work if, for example, you fall off the ladder and you get depressed and you have an issue with being depressed. So then we get stuck in depressed, and often we call that depression. We're at the bottom of our emotional ladder, getting up the top, climbing up. Often then what people do, they reach a rung, they learn to willpower it, so they force their way up that next step, never realizing that it actually takes a moment to climb that ladder. Energy has no resistance. Remember this. So what ends up happening is basically, from my perspective of trying to make it, basically I was trying to collapse that ladder into one single thing. And once I finally surrendered to that and healed that, let that pass, my ladder expanded. And when it came to the weights, I started to heal these things called shoulds. Now, it's interesting because you if you're into personal development, you would have encountered this before. You know, Tony Robbins and stuff talks about turn your shoulds into musts. And I hope for some people that works. They never fucking worked for me. Why? Because they weren't my musts. They weren't. I was not going to alter myself and alter my belief systems, ultimately adding another layer to my personality just so I could be who I was meant to be, which is the person I am underneath. So I started to finally heal these shoulds. And when you heal these shoulds, and I'll explain more about what this means in a second, but the little preface is when you finally heal your shoulds, you end up, this is very primordial. It's the first time I'm ever announcing it. I've had like non-stop conversations with my girlfriend about this for like the last day. But when you finally heal your shoulds, the most beautiful thing happens. You just let it be. And when you just let it be, the next most beautiful thing happens is you heal the deepest pains. My God, this is almost like advanced surrender, like advanced healing. But for me, it's always the same. Healing the small stuff is going to be the same as healing the big stuff. It's emotional surrender. You don't have to surrender to life, surrender to how it feels. So what ends up happening? Well, what was there? I had a belief. That I should lose weight. Upon surrendering to the feeling that I felt like I should lose weight, well, I let myself feel fat. Finally. Turns out I wasn't letting myself feel that way. When I surrendered to the feeling, all these beliefs, these subtle beliefs, because I remember I was collapsing all my beliefs into one P that I was still never letting myself look at. When I surrendered to that feeling of I should know how to lose weight, well, then I let myself not know. And often when you let yourself not know, what ends up happening? You finally let yourself know because there's space. There's space to know. There's space to exist in the fucking world. You're not trying to force something. You're not trying to make something that it's not. You're existing in harmony with the world. I made this joke with my partner, and she thought it was the funniest thing in the whole world, but it was to do with sexual intimacy. I realized there was a part of me that always felt like I should be having sex, like I should be trying, I should be getting there. And the irony was, I made the joke and she laughed. I didn't even mean it as a joke. I said, I'm always trying to have sex. I always think I should, that I never let myself have it. Like have sex. Like I wasn't feeling it at the depth that it should. And that's why I teach this shit. I teach you the process of healing the relationships, the blocks to love. I'm talking about this from still a healed perspective, right? Like I'm talking, let's get to that next level. I practice what I preach. And I preach it fucking heavily, which means I practice it heavily. Non-stop, all the time, no matter what. And there's a lot of stuff that came out with that. The fact that I feel like I should be productive sometimes. Even these videos. This video itself is a testament to my own healing. I realized when it came to my YouTube, my Instagram, my all this stuff, that I had a lot of unprocessed shoulds. That it was like, oh, I should do good content. Bitch, I do good content. That I should make high quality videos. That I should have good camera setups. That I should be entertaining. And all of these beliefs, what do? We surrender to them. And when we're surrendering to them, we're actually feeling the pain that's underneath that caused us to have this essentially an overcompensation, an overproduced belief within ourselves that forced us to be more active and hyperactive than what we truly are deeply underneath. And here's the thing, if I start producing these videos, not because I think that I should, but because I want to, they have a fundamentally different energy. And here's the thing, I put pressure on you jerks. That's right, you. I feel like you should be commenting and you should be liking and you should be subscribing like every motherfucking YouTuber. But I bet now that I don't care as much. That you can be you and I can be me. And honestly, those things would rise. And I know this as someone who has healed my own personal relationships. A lot of the aspects of my relationships that I've healed actually comes from an element of equanimity. I'm equanimous with the result. I have a preference. Obviously, we always have preferences, but I'm equanimous. I'm okay with either outcome. And a lot of the times, especially when I'm working with people in relationships in the past, that has always been the goal. In fact, one of my friends, someone I know personally, got married because of that. She testified to me that she was always trying, basically wanted her partner to marry her, wanted. She alone, from looking at the Instagram stuff that I post, was like, from that she chilled And he was like, fucking couldn't get married fast enough. Energy has no resistance. When we are healed, the things move fast. But the thing is, often we've got to heal the small stuff first. So there's a lot in this. There's a lot in this. And I'm thankful to have on this journey, to have spent, I once posted on Instagram, like, it takes people like a lifetime to solve a problem that they do in just a moment. And I remember someone was like, oh, that's so sad. It's like, no, it's not fucking sad. It's exciting. We spend a lifetime solving a problem to solve it in a moment, which means when we solve it in a moment, we give that on to other people, and other people can fucking solve it in a momento. So I'm excited. I'm excited to share this. I'm excited to heal this within myself. I'm excited to impart this onto you. I'm excited to drop the pressure that I put on myself and the pressure that I inadvertently, through proxy, had been putting on other people and not even realizing it. And that's always my favorite thing. We're talking to people about realizations. Everyone's always like, oh, I didn't even realize I was thinking that. That's because they're unconscious programs that have consistently and perpetually plagued us. And like living with a splinter, we forgot that it was there. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you did like this video, I don't know, thanks. I'll talk to you soon. Oh yeah, check out Healing the Box of Love.